In the summer of 1858, London's river became a weapon, hot air lifting the Thames into people's mouths, their bedrooms, and the chambers of Parliament. The city didn't just smell bad, it started to fail in public. By the end, you'll understand how the Great Stink forced Britain's most powerful leaders to admit what they'd denied for decades, and how one crisis rewired a capital's relationship with disease, engineering, and government responsibility. If London couldn't make the river livable, it risked mass illness, economic paralysis, and a political system literally driven out by its own waste, and the fixes would decide who paid, who suffered, and who got protected. How did a smell become so overwhelming that it changed national policy? And why did it take the Thames turning into an open sewer before London finally acted? On a hot June evening in 1858, the River Thames stops being a river. It becomes a wound. The water is low, the mud is high, and what the mud holds has begun to speak. Inside the Houses of Parliament, men in dark coats press handkerchiefs to their faces. Some soak the cloth in chloride of lime, some in vinegar. It barely helps. The smell punches through everything. It fills the chamber. It crawls under doors. It clings to hair and wool. A clerk opens a window for air. The air is worse. He shuts it again. Another man retches and tries to hide it. They are lawmakers of an empire, but tonight they cannot outvote a stench. Then the decision comes, not with a speech, but with a flinch. Curtains are ordered, heavy ones, soaked in chemicals. They are hung over the windows facing the Thames, like bandages over a rotting sore. Outside, the river moves slow. Barges slide past, and the oars disturb the surface. The surface burps. The city has lived with filth before. But this is different. This is public. This is inescapable. This is shame rising on the heat. So here is the concrete moment. Parliament, the heart of British power, is being driven from its own building by the smell of London's own waste. And in that humiliation, something begins to change. But why did it take an odor so violent, so undeniable, to force a city to face what it had been pouring into its river for years? To understand the Great Stink, you have to walk backwards through London, not in distance, in time. This is a city that has grown too fast. A city that has swallowed villages and fields. A city of brick and soot and bells. People pour in for work, for survival, for the promise of wages. But London's body has not grown with its population. The streets are crowded. The courts are narrow. The basements are damp. The privies are full. Most homes do not have what we would call a sewer. They have a pit, a cesspool. It sits under the floor or behind the house, collecting what no one wants to see. When it overflows, it is empty. Not by gentlemen. By nightmen. They work in the dark. They scrape and shovel. They load carts with the city's leavings. The smell follows them. They are necessary, and they are despised. And then there are the drains, old channels, ditches made into pipes, storm sewers meant for rain. But rain is not the only thing that goes into them now. Everything flows downhill, everything wants the lowest place. And the lowest place is the river. The Thames is not just scenery, it is highway, it is marketplace, it is dumping ground, it is water source. London drinks from it. London washes in it. London washes in it. London washes in it. It is a circle that should never be closed. Yet it is. Day after day, year after year, people complain. Newspapers complain. Newspapers complain. Committees form. Reports are written. Plans are proposed. And then the city carries on. Because filth is familiar, and familiar filth can be ignored. So, what breaks the habit? What turns a long-tolerated disgust into a crisis that cannot be postponed? The river had been sick for a long time, but in the summer of 1858, it becomes feverish. The winter before has been hard. Then spring comes. Then heat. The kind of heat that presses down on rooftops and stalls in alleys, the kind that makes meat go off in hours. The Thames drops. Its level falls. More of the foreshore is exposed. And the foreshore is not sand. It is black mud. And the mud is layered with human waste. With slaughterhouse runoff. With dead animals. With industrial chemicals. With everything that the city has chosen not to handle. When the sun bakes it, it releases it. Not as a smell that drifts. As a smell that attacks. Men on boats cover their faces. Dock workers swear and gag. People on bridges hurry faster. Shopkeepers near the river close windows and hang cloth. And the closer you get to Westminster, the worse it becomes. Because the most powerful building in London sits right beside the most abused water in London. Inside Parliament, debates are scheduled. Business is supposed to continue, but the air turns thick. There is a sense that the building itself has been invaded. Not by protest, not by fire, by the city's own breath. Members of Parliament speak of nausea, of headaches, of their eyes watering. They cannot concentrate, they cannot pretend. This is no longer only a problem for the poor who live near the drains. It is in the room, it is on the benches. It is in the lungs of men who make laws. In public, there is laughter too, a cruel kind. Cartoons show the river as a monster, or as a serpent, a thing that should be fought or tamed. But underneath the jokes is fear, a question people have asked before. Is this smell itself deadly? And if the air is poison, what does that make the water? So what did London believe was killing it in 1858? And what did it refuse to believe? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. For years, London treated the Thames like an invisible problem, until heat turned it into an inescapable one. So why did the city build more drains that fed the river instead of saving it? Pause for a second and picture this. The richest lawmakers in Britain couldn't endure the same air their own city forced on everyone else, and that hypocrisy is exactly where the story turns. For most of London, the enemy has a name: miasma, bad air. It is an old idea, ancient even. It says disease rises from rot. It says sickness drifts in fog. It says the nose can warn you. And in 1858, the nose is screaming. So, miasma feels true, it feels obvious. If a street stinks, people fall ill. If a house is damp and foul, children die. If a neighborhood reeks, graves fill faster. But there is another idea moving through the century, a quieter one, not yet fully proven, not yet widely accepted. The idea that something in the water, not the air, carries death. London has already been struck by cholera. Not once, several times. Each wave brings panic. Each wave brings arguments. Some doctors map cases. Some count the dead. Some point to specific pumps, to specific streets. They say, look, the water is the pathway. Others say no. They point to the stink. They say, can't you smell it? They say, the air is corrupted. It is not only science, it is politics. If disease comes from air, you can fight it with perfume and smoke and chloride. You can hide it. If disease comes from water, you must rebuild the city. You must dig. You must spend. You must admit that London's proud river has been turned into a sewer. In the summer of the Great Stink, the miasma theory wins the room. Because it wins the senses. Because it wins the immediate terror. And yet cholera does not arrive because of smell alone. It arrives because waste and drinking water share the same stream. So here is the tension. London is about to solve a problem it understands, and accidentally solve a problem it does not. But who will take control of that solution? Who will decide what London becomes when it finally admits the river is failing? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. Everyone blamed bad air, but the deaths didn't follow the wind the way people expected. If smell wasn't the killer, what was actually moving through London's water? Here's the twist. The solution that made London feel cleaner at street level was quietly making the river worse downstream, and the bill was about to come due. Power in London does not sit in one place. It splinters, parishes, vestries, boards, private companies, old rights, new taxes. For decades, the city's sewers are not a single system. They are fragments, some new, some medieval, some simply wrong. Then comes a shift. The Metropolitan Board of Works. A new body meant to think bigger than a parish, bigger than a street. And within it, a man who does not look like a hero. Not a lord. Not a famous doctor. An engineer, a professional, a man who measures problems. His name is Joseph Bazalgette. He has already been thinking about the river. He has already seen the reports. He knows that sending waste straight into the Thames within the city is madness. His idea is simple in principle. Move the sewage away. Catch it. Carry it. Send it downstream. Release it where the tide will not bring it back. To do that, you need intercepting sewers. Big ones. On both sides of the river. They run like hidden arteries. They gather smaller drains. They steal the filth before it reaches the central Thames. But simple in principle means brutal in practice. Because London is packed. Because London is built on clay. Because London is built on clay. Because London's streets are already choked. And above all, because the plan costs money, a lot of money. Before the Great Stink, plans can be delayed, argued, reduced, ruined. Because no one wants to pay for an invisible triumph. But in 1858, the triumph is not invisible anymore. The failure has a smell, and it reaches into Parliament itself, so the question becomes urgent. Will lawmakers finally fund the cure? Or will they keep treating the symptoms, hoping the heat breaks before their pride does? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. Parliament tried to cover the stink with curtains soaked in disinfectant, like fabric could defeat a river. What decision did they make when even the disinfectant couldn't keep them in the building? Forget the river as scenery. Think of it as a machine, because in 1858, the Thames started behaving like one, and one part of that machine was about to break. In June, the heat keeps rising, and so does the pressure. Members of Parliament do what institutions often do. They try small fixes first. They try chemicals. They try curtains. They try curtains. They try curtains. They try to outlast the season. But the river does not negotiate. Newspapers describe the stench as a public calamity. Visitors complain. Londoners who cannot escape the riverfront suffer the most. and they have suffered for years. Now, though, suffering has an audience. Because the smell has embarrassed the powerful, it has turned their workplace into a sick room. So Parliament moves, not with a grand moral awakening, with speed, with money. The funding is authorized. The great works begin. The city commits itself to an engineering project on a scale that feels impossible. Bazalgette and his teams plan routes. They calculate gradients. They think in inches per mile. Because if the slope is wrong, the sewage will stall. If it stalls, it will rot. If it rots, it will rise again. They also plan for growth. Not just London as it is, London as it will be. A city that will keep swelling. It is a gamble. Spend now. Dig now. Build now. Or keep paying in sickness and humiliation. Still, authorization is not completion. A vote does not lay brick. A budget does not move earth. The great stink has forced a decision. But the river is still there. The summer is still there. And the work ahead is enormous. So what does it take to build a new London under the old one? And who pays the price while it is being built? The terrifying part wasn't that sewage was in the Thames, it was that it was now concentrated, stirred, and delivered on schedule by modern plumbing. Who benefited from that progress, and who paid for it first? This isn't a story about dirt, it's a story about delay, and the most expensive part of delay was about to land on a single summer week. Construction begins, and London becomes a patient on the operating table. Only the surgery is performed while the patient walks around. Streets are opened, trenches appear, traffic shifts, businesses complain, residents complain, residents complain. Everyone complains, but the work continues, because it has to. The new sewers are not small pipes, they are tunnels big enough to stand in. They are built of brick, layer after layer, millions of bricks, set into curves that can hold pressure, that can resist collapse. The men who build them work in darkness. They work in damp. They work with the smell still present, though the plan is to defeat it. Accidents happen. Walls fall. Gas builds. Flooding comes fast when it comes. And the city above does not stop producing waste. It never pauses. It never waits for the engineer to catch up. Along the river, another transformation begins. Embankments. New walls that claim land from the Thames. New roads. New public spaces. A cleaner edge. A more controlled river. This is not just plumbing. It is urban redesign. The river is being disciplined. London is reshaping its own shoreline to hide the mess it once dumped in plain sight. Pumping stations are built to lift sewage where gravity cannot. Because London is not flat. Because the system must keep moving, even when the earth refuses to slope the right way. From the outside, the pumping stations can look like temples or fortresses. They are proud buildings for an unglamorous task. They are monuments to what the city no longer wants to smell. Yet even as tunnels extend and walls rise, there is a troubling thought. If you intercept the sewage and send it downstream, you are not making it vanish. You are moving it. So what happens to the filth once it leaves the heart of London? And who lives where it ends up? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. London had already survived cholera, and still it argued about whether the river mattered. So what finally broke the stalemate? Science, fear, or pure political self-preservation? If you want to understand why London changed, don't follow the sewage, follow the votes. Because the next decision wasn't made in a lab, but under the pressure of ridicule. For a time, the results feel like magic. The central Thames improves. The air near Westminster becomes bearable. The shame begins to fade. But downstream, the story is different. Because sewage delivered in greater volume is still sewage, the system is designed to carry waste out of the city, to release it where the tide will take it away. That is the hope. That is the theory. Yet rivers have moods. Tides shift. Weather changes. And what is sent away can return. People along the lower river notice. Fishermen notice. Communities notice. It is not as theatrical as the Great Stink at Westminster, but it is real. Still, within London, something has changed. The city has accepted a new responsibility. Not perfectly, not completely, but in a way it never did before, and disease begins to tell its own truth. Cholera outbreaks that once tore through neighborhoods begin to lose their grip, not because London's air is sweeter, but because its drinking water is less likely to be contaminated by its own waste. The public does not always connect the dots. Many still speak the language of miasma. They still fear smell, and smell is still unpleasant, but beneath their feet, engineering is doing what argument could not. This is how history often moves. Not by perfect understanding, by action under pressure. Yet the pressure that forced action was not compassion. It was self-preservation. It was discomfort. It was embarrassment. So what does it mean that the decisive moment came only when the stench reached the powerful? And what problems remain invisible today because they have not yet become unbearable? There is a temptation to tell this story as a victory. A city confronts its filth. An engineer saves millions. A great river is restored. But the Great Stink is also a mirror. It reflects how London valued lives and whose suffering counted. For years, the worst smells sat over the poorest districts. Courts and alleys where people lived packed together, where waste seeped into walls, where children played near open drains. The rich could retreat. They had space. They had servants. They had distance. When cholera came, it struck hardest where sanitation was weakest. The dead were tallied. The fear was shared. But the daily conditions were not. Then, in 1858, nature provides a cruel equalizer. Heat. Low water, a river that reveals what it has been forced to carry. And suddenly, Parliament cannot breathe. Only then does the money arrive quickly. Only then does urgency become national. Bazalgette's system becomes a backbone for modern London. It is copied. It influences other cities. It changes what people expect from government. Not just lawmaking, but infrastructure, public health, prevention. And yet, even in success, the city learns a dangerous lesson. That problems can be pushed away, downstream, out of sight, out of smell. The Great Stink teaches that filth will always return in some form. If not to the nose, then to the water. If not to Parliament, then to someone else. So as the river quiets and the curtains come down, one last question lingers. When the next crisis rises from what a city discards, would it be recognized early, when it harms the powerless, or only later, when it finally reaches the seats of power?